All right, and we are live. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Chris. This is my channel, We Love Comics, and I thought I would do a surprise live show, a little bit of a Q&A for anybody that is interested in asking questions. I will do my best to answer them. I mean, I've been collecting comics off and on since the early 80s, so I do have some experience, but keep in mind, I am not a professional, so I can't get everything, so I'll do my best. But I wanted to talk about... Oh, good, and they can hear me, so thank you. That's always a good sign. I wanted to talk about a little bit more about the video I did earlier. And if people have questions, please ask them. And there are no silly questions or ridiculous questions. So if you're somebody that's brand new to comic collecting, I can't speak for anyone else, but you don't have to be intimidated here, because the only way you'll ever get an answer is by asking a question. So even if you think it's the simplest question, don't be afraid to ask it, because obviously if you're asking the question, it's something you need to learn, and that's only going to make you into a better comic book collector. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the packaging, and if you haven't seen the video, please check it out, because what inspired me to make that video is I saw one video that I talked about in it, and that's what initially inspired me, but that was because I've seen that type of video almost everywhere on YouTube when people talk about shipping comics. Now, the one thing I can say is that it's not bad, but it's not the ultimate best, so this way you can have your comics be sent somewhere and be basically the same as you mailed them. Now, some of the biggest mistakes I see, and I even read this in the comment section, I'm not going to point anybody out because this is not about that. This is about helping people learn to improve something that's already good. You know, it's like somebody making a great meal and then you find a way to add a couple of extra spices to make it that much better. Doesn't mean the other way was bad, you're just improving on it. And I mean, with any kind of technology and advancements and inventions, eventually we see something become improved. I mean, just look at your cell phone you're probably watching this on. I remember the old flip phones, and I also remember the old rotary dial phones. So improvement is a good thing on something that's already good. So one of the biggest things I see that people make a mistake in and trust in so much when it comes to mailing their comics is bubble wrap. Now, I see bubble wrap all the time. Now, to me, bubble wrap is good for something like a slabbed book, because it's just going to give it cushion. It's not good for a regular bag and boarded comic, because the whole purpose of protecting a comic is to keep it from bending. Now, bubble wrap is not something that is stable, so it's not going to protect a comic. Bubble wrap is good for delicate items, things that could break and crack, because it adds cushion. But bubble wrap is not going to be helpful in any way, other than if you want money taken out of your wallet, to protect a comic. At least a raw comic. So keep that in mind. I see it all the time, and especially when I get a package and it's delivered in a small little comic mailer, and then they wrap it in bubble wrap. That's not going to help, because here's the thing. If you can bend your comic, then so can a postal worker or anyone else that receives it. So that's why if you watch the video that I didn't put it in one of those foldable mailers. They're easy, they're cheap, but they're not as secure as you think. And writing "do not bend," I did a kind of a sarcastic response to somebody, but it really makes sense if you think about it. Writing "do not bend" on a bendable package is like you going and writing "do not hit me" on the side of your car. It's not going to do anything, because if you have a postal worker or a Federal Express worker or a UPS worker, because they, you know, all can damage comics and packages, and I've seen it. If you get one that just doesn't care, they're going to just try and ram it into the mailbox so they don't have to get out of the truck and actually walk to your door, even if it's less than 10 feet away. I mean, if you have something that's going to be potentially damaged, it can be. So that's why I recommend doing almost overkill. When I package my comics, or package anything, because I also have a little side business where I make these little pyramid things, and they're made of resin, so they're fragile. I package my items like I think somebody's purposely going to throw it around and destroy it. Because there's been many times I hand a package to somebody at the post office or UPS, and they take it and they just throw it over to wherever it's going to be placed. And I'm like, if they're going to do that while I'm there watching, just imagine when I'm not there what they might do. So I package everything like somebody is purposely going to destroy it. So if you saw the video I made earlier, you couldn't destroy that unless you seriously tried. Now, if you have a mailer, you can bend that. And how many times have you seen people where the mailer gets bent, and then you open up the package and you see it wrapped in bubble wrap, and you still see that crease now along the side of the comic book? So you have to think not by the way you would treat a book, but how the other person that you're sending it to is going to treat it. Because especially if you're going to mail books to CGC, CBCS, PGX, or any other grading company, remember, especially the busier they are, the faster they're going to be to try and get your books out, which means they are not going to open your package with care. So keep that in mind. If you are sending your books to get graded, you want the highest grade possible. So if you're going to overly tape it, or you're going to wrap it in bubble wrap and just put it in a regular comic book mailer, you're hoping and assuming that the postal workers and the people who handle your comics are going to treat them with the same respect and care that you would. And like, for example, CGC has thousands upon thousands of comics they get on a daily basis. If you secure, quote-unquote, your comics by wrapping it in all tape and putting 2 tons of bubble wrap and then taping that up and then putting cardboard, they're just going to rip through it. They're not going to really care, because the people that are opening your packages, those are the minimum wage workers. These are people that are on an assembly line, and their job is just to open up your packages. If you think they're going to treat your comics the same way you would, you're going to be very disappointed when your 9.8 comic comes back a 9.4. And I see it all the time where people think it's the end of the world that their comic they thought was a 9.8 is a 9.6 or below. So you have to think like they will most likely react. So if you see the video I made earlier, there is no tape. Because when you put tape onto something, it can stick. And how many times have you had a package arrive where they taped it down and it gets stuck and you bend the comic, or the tape gets stuck on the bag and board and it rips it? So you got to be careful. So my technique is easier because you're just putting them into a bag and then closing the bag, and there's no tape, which means if I was to send that to get graded, the people say, oh, all I have to do is just take this out of the bag and ta-da, next. Less chance of it getting damaged. So the more you add, problem-wise, the more risk of your comics getting damaged. Because again, most people assume that somebody else on the receiving end of your package is going to be as careful as you are. That's a bad mistake. Now, here's another one I want to talk about, because this was what inspired me to do this video. And again, I'm not pointing anybody out, because this is not something I think people think beyond what they're doing. And unfortunately, a lot of people do that, and that's where mistakes happen, because most of the time people think, ah, this is a good idea, let me do this, and they don't think about what could happen from it. And I made this mistake when I was younger, and that is wrapping your comics in cellophane. This is a absolute do not do, and I'm going to explain why. And again, I can understand why people do it, because, you know, they're thinking, like the person said, they're doing it to keep the rain out. Now, keep in mind, what keeps something out also keeps it in. So I want you to think on a different level when it comes to this. And I've seen this several times. I've seen many people wrap their comics in cellophane. Now, you need your comics to breathe. Now, when I mean that, it doesn't mean they have noses and they're inhaling oxygen. When you're talking about letting something breathe, in other words, letting air escape. Now, there's an old thing they teach you in survival school, where if you were in an area where it was going to get really cold, and you wanted the best chance to survive, and let's say all you have is a sleeping bag, well, the more clothes you wear, the colder you will actually be, because your body heat cannot escape because of the clothes you're wearing, and you actually sweat, which actually lowers your body temperature. So they actually teach you that the best way to keep warmer is to wear less clothing, and I'll tell you why this is relevant. When you wrap your comics in cellophane, completely wrap them, and make them airtight, what's happening is the oxygen cannot escape. And if it's placed somewhere where there's a lot of heat, that creates what? Condensation, which is moisture. So now what's happening is, because you're not allowing the ability for the comic to breathe and let air flow in and out, now that moisture, instead of building on the outside of the comic bag, is going to be accumulating on the inside, which will damage your comic and create mold. Now, if you're sending them, for example, to CGC, and I say them because on average they tend to take a lot longer. If you have a comic where you didn't spend the extra money on the faster service, it usually takes about 3 months average to get your comics back. And I know this because I've used CGC. What if you wrapped your comics in cellophane to quote-unquote protect them, and they place them in an area where there's just a lot of heat, because they figure, oh, it's just comics, we don't need air conditioning in that room, and the heat builds up, and your comic is now sitting there for months with other boxes all around it. It's wrapped in cellophane, it cannot breathe, and all of a sudden moisture builds up, and now your 9.8 is a 8.5. Now, see, like I said, it's not always somebody doing something wrong because they're not smart. It's sometimes people only seeing one particular part and then not seeing the effects of afterwards. So that's why if you ever see a comic book bag, yes, it flips over, but it doesn't seal it airtight. Because people seem to forget that even if you vacuum seal something, there is always space on a microorganism level. And if you trap something in there, its only food source is going to be paper. So even if you vacuum seal something, you're only delaying the inevitable. You need your comics to be able to breathe. So it allows bacteria to exit. It allows moisture to keep from building up. That's why if you've ever seen somebody go to a spa and they want to do one of those weight loss kind of treatments, what do? They wrap the person in cellophane, and I should know because I work for salons. I'm also a licensed massage therapist. I have been since 1996. And in spas, if somebody wants one of those weight loss treatments, they add whatever creams and whatever products, they wrap them in cellophane, put a heat lamp, and let them sweat it out. So if you're doing that to your comic, or you're sealing it to the point where you think, oh, this is airtight, you are actually potentially damaging your comics. And again, it's on a micro level. You can't see it. So you're actually damaging your comics. And that's why, you can have the best intentions in the world and put your comics away and they're not stored properly, and then all of a sudden, maybe 10 years down the line, you're like, oh, I'm going to go check on those comics, and all of a sudden you see they're destroyed. So be very careful, because these things take years to happen. So you will not notice them. And that's why I tell people, when it comes to something like Mylars and fullbacks, they are by far superior than regular bags and boards. But there is a false sense of security thinking, well, I'm spending all this money, it must be guaranteeing my comics to be safer. Now, they do say that Mylars will last for 1,000 years or so, and that's probably true. Last time I checked, we don't last 1,000 years, and the paper product inside them will also not last thousands of years. So, unfortunately, businesses have convinced people to spend more money on something that really does not make a major difference, especially if you store your comics improperly. So you can have the absolute best Mylar, you can have the absolute best fullback, and place it in an area where there's moisture, or there's heat temperature differences, or you lay them flat and put a whole bunch of other Mylar comics on top of each other, and then all of a sudden 10 years later you're upset that not only your comics destroyed, but you spent a lot more money doing it. So I see this all over the place, and I think my original channel where I tried to communicate that, I didn't communicate that in the best way, and I got literally attacked and destroyed, and that was what started the we hate, we love comics movement. So, like, the worst places to put your comics are, like Anime 110-100 says, the worst place is to put them in a basement or an attic, especially if they're unfinished, because why? You'll get extreme temperature changes. Because especially in an unfinished basement, basements are surrounded by concrete. Concrete absorbs the air around you. That's why when it's really cold, if you put your hands on concrete, it will also feel cold. And it will also warm up. And plus, a lot of times, especially, again, if they're unfinished, they're going to be very dark. Dark creates the perfect place for rodents and insects. Those will love to eat your comic books. And again, a Mylar is not going to stop them. It may slow them down, but it will not stop them. So these are things you need to think about. You have to think more about, well, I'm just buying a bag and board and I'm putting a comic in it. Comics are paper. Paper is made from trees. Trees do not last forever. Everything degenerates. Even steel, even rocks deteriorate over time. Why do you think, for example, the Golden Gate Bridge, why do you think they paint it every year? They think they do it because they want to spend the money and have nothing better to do? No, they paint it because they're trying to keep it from rusting. Now, that will never stop it from ever happening. It will just delay it. Eventually, even the most solid things that you think will last forever will come crumbling down. So, comic books are made of paper. Paper will break down. How you store it is just as important as what you store it in. And that's why, if you see, I don't use Mylars. Now, again, I'm not saying they're not superior products. They are superior products. But I have books that I put in my original bag and boards since the 1980s. Never changed the bag and boards. And sent them to get graded 2 years ago. And they all came back 9.4s to 9.6s. And some people can say, oh, well, how come you didn't get a 9.8? Well, it could have been that way when I bought it. Not every book on a comic shelf is a 9.8. People just assume just because a comic is new, it's an automatic 9.8. You know, people touch those books. People sort through them to try and find the best one, which could bend the tip. You know, they all stack them where the staples are on one side, so the ones near the back will be compressed. And especially if you were in the generation like me that had the spinner racks, you know, every time somebody took one out and put it back, first of all, the first one against the little metal part of the rack is going to be scratched. And nobody's really careful about putting them back. You ever wonder why the bottom of comics are bent so much? You can blame spinner racks for a lot of that. Or people that don't know how to put the comics in the bag and board properly, and they don't pay attention, and all of a sudden you get that what's called a dog ear on the bottom corner of the comic. So what I want to recommend to anybody is, whether you're an expert in comics or you're a beginner, to think a little bit differently when it comes to situations like, for example, thinking about moisture, because no one talks about that. And I see people that are collecting comics for 30, 40, 50 years doing things that are not the ultimate best way to do stuff. And when it comes to your collection, especially if you're somebody that has to have the highest grade possible, well, you don't want to just say, well, I'm going to spend all the extra money on a bag and board, and then I could do whatever I want with my comic and be perfectly fine. Because also, remember, keep in mind, even if you get a book graded, even companies like CGC recommend that every 5 to 7 years you regrade it and take it out, because they don't guarantee it to be protected. And people think, well, they put that little sheet of paper on the first page and that protects the comic. If you want to believe that, that's perfectly fine. Again, it's not going to hurt it, and it is going to help it, but it's not like all of a sudden you've just put a bulletproof vest around your comic and it's going to prevent things from, causing problems. How many people actually knew that they recommend that every 5 to 7 years you reslab your already graded comic? What does that tell you? That even with the protection that the grading companies use, it does not protect a piece of paper for very long. Because, like I said, even if you seal your comic tight, you never know what you just sealed in with it. And people have this problem, and it's what we've been taught. You're always focus on what you see, and you never think about what you can't see. And if you watch anything like the Ant-Man movies, you start to realize that things that are beyond your visibility can severely affect you. But people are trained not to think that way. And I'll give you a prime example that I think I've used this before, but even if I haven't, I guarantee you will get the answer wrong no matter which you choose. If I have a glass, and I fill the glass with water, and I only fill it halfway, is that glass half full or half empty? Let me know in the comment section what you think. Now, the whole purpose of that is supposed to make you think that they're telling you you're either optimistic or pessimistic. But there's actually a greater test on that. It's the test to see if you can think beyond what you see. Because the glass is neither half full nor half empty. It is completely full. Because the question does not state, is the glass half full or half empty of water? But that's what you focus on. You forget that even though it is filled halfway with water, the other half of that glass is filled with air. Air has bacteria. Air has things like particles that you can't see. So you're taught to be focused on what you see. So when it comes to something like comic books, it's the same thing. When you put a bag and board and a comic together, it doesn't matter the quality of the bag and board. It matters the air that surrounds it. There is moisture. There is bacteria. Paper breaks down. Put a banana in the best Mylar you have and the best backing board you have and see how much that keeps that fruit from rotting and bugs from being able to get in there. Do you ever have something in a refrigerator that you had completely wrapped in cellophane and you forgot that it was in there, and months later it's moldy and it's got bugs and things in it? Wonder how they got through your quote-unquote protection. So what I'm trying to get people to do is think on a higher level. Because like I've said so many times, businesses love brand loyalty. And they love the people who will regurgitate what they've been told, because now you're giving that company free advertisement. So anybody out there who thinks that a Mylar and a backing board are going to forever protect your comic, I am sad to say you are 100% wrong. It will delay it. It will definitely be better than a regular bag and board if you are a person that lives for multi-hundreds of years. But last time I checked, the average lifespan is about 74 years old. So your bag and board will outlive you, will outlive your children. But the comic will eventually be dust in that nice Mylar that you spent 3 to 4 times the amount on. Businesses love people for what? For the money they can give them. So they're going to tell you everything that you want to hear. Why do you think when you see a beer commercial, you see nothing but beautiful people on the beach in bikinis? having the time of their life, having parties, because they want you to buy their product, and they're going to use your emotions against you to get your money. That is why there's an old saying that says, a fool and their money are soon parted. And a lot of times it's just naivety or just plain trust. So there are going to be some people that no matter what I do or say, they're going to pick one or two bad things out of what I say and justify their own evil of that I'm supposedly the devil. And they can rant and rave and say, oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about. But just look up simple science. Look up bacteria. Look up paper. Paper does not last forever. I mean, even our Constitution, they have it in a temperature-controlled room. They have it vacuum sealed. And all that's going to do is it's going to keep it for another century or two. But paper eventually breaks down. And the day that the temperature-controlled room fails, and the room gets to become the regular temperature it's supposed to be, that bacteria will go crazy on that paper and that parchment. And the funny part is, the original Constitution is not made of paper. It's made of hemp, which, by the way, is marijuana. Hemp is actually a lot longer lasting. So people say, oh, look how long the Constitution has lasted. It's not paper. It's hemp. One of the reasons why people should really learn about why paper replaced hemp back in the 30s. It's all because of greedy people in the businesses. Parchment used to be made from hemp. Hemp lasts a lot longer. It's a lot stronger. It's a lot cheaper. You could make it in your backyard. But that's not good if you're the owner of a paper company. It's one of the reasons why marijuana is illegal. People don't research things. They always regurgitate what they're told. And that's why it's easy to fool people based on your ability to trust them. So you don't have to trust me. You don't even have to like me. Just look up this information and you'll see it's actually factual. I've spent years actually learning things instead of being told things. So I'm not trying to preach to people. I'm trying to help people think that, like they say, if you want something done right, you have to do it yourself. So if you want to just sit there and regurgitate what somebody else regurgitated because some business wanted to sell you their product, you have every right to do that. But there is a price to pay for that. So let me just read some of the questions. I wanted to get that out there because to me, it's like I want people's comics to be the best as possible. I mean, I don't make any money off of you having a comic that is shipped out better or lasts longer. I do it because I care more about just myself. That's why I give out tips and advice that some people keep to themselves because they can profit off of it. That's, to me, not really full of integrity. So let me see about any of the questions. So if you want to ask a question, you can. And again, don't be intimidated. There are some people that have that elitist attitude that, oh, how could you not know that? Or how do you collect that way? Or how, whatever. You don't get that here. So you can ask the simplest of question because obviously if you're asking the question, you need to know the answer. And I'll do my best. All right, let's see. CGC fan says, what is a CGC-worthy comic book pick? Well, that's up to you. You could literally have anything graded. So don't go by what everybody else says is popular. Go by what makes you happy. If you want to grade something just because you want to know what the grade is, or you want to grade something just because you love the cover and you want it protected and displayed, then that's a right reason. So people ask questions like this all the time. Which comic should I get? Which comic should I get graded? Things like that. Whatever makes you happy. Because if you collect something for the wrong reason, you are going to be unhappy more than you will be happy. And I'll give you a prime example. Years ago, back in around 2015, there was a book called Scooby-Doo Adventures 12, where they said it was the lowest Harley Quinn print run ever. Now, when I learned about that fact, I bought 2 of them for cover price. And when I found out about that, I made a video, which as you could see, when I make a video about comics to get, all of a sudden, people go and get them. Now, I tell people all the time, do not just buy something on an emotional level. Make sure you research it, make sure you try and get the best deal, and wait for it if you have to. But many people just jump on the first thing that they see, and then all of a sudden, if it doesn't pan out, now they spent 10 times the amount on something that they were not even happy about. So that's exactly what happened with that book. It all of a sudden, I think it was like a $2.99 book. So I bought 2 of them for $2.99. And I told people, get them right away. And what do most people do? They wait. And then they wait too long instead of getting it really quickly or going to a comic book store or trying to wait for a deal. That book shot up to about $25. Now, you could probably find it in the dollar bin. Now, I didn't sell. I still have the original 2 that I bought. And I could have sold it at $25, but I didn't. And now they're worth probably cover price or less. Am I upset? Absolutely not. Why? Because I bought them because I liked them. If you buy stuff or grade stuff solely for the monetary value, you are going to be disappointed more than you will ever be happy. So my suggestion to anybody out there that wants to get a comic book, get what you like. Get what makes you happy. Because, trust me, when it comes to investments, if you cannot wait years for something to have value, if you could not have that kind of patience, if you are going to be upset every time your investment loses or devalues, you should not do it. Because for every 1 success, you will probably have 90 failures. You need thick skin. You need patience. You need to think on a deeper level and a long term. Like I've said in many videos, I had Amazing Spider-Man number 300 that I bought originally the day it came out, had it signed by Todd McFarlane, and about 10 to 15 years ago, I tried to sell that book for $25 at a yard sale. Nobody bought it because nobody cared about it. Now, how many people say now they wish they could get an unsigned Amazing Spider-Man 300 for $25? They buy every one of them off the shelf, but yet they've been around since the 90s. I think 1988. How many people were buying them in 1995, in 2000, in 2007? They weren't, because nobody cared about them. And when do people care about them? When all of a sudden everybody else wants them. So if you buy something because everybody else says that you should get it, and you're buying it only because everybody else tells you it'll shoot to the moon, and you don't like it, you're going to be very disappointed. So get what you love. See, me, I love collecting first appearances. I love the ones that have value to them, but I don't sell them. One day I will. I mean, you can't take them to your grave, and I don't have any children to leave them to. And, you know, eventually, if I could turn around and sell all of my comics and have the ability to buy some beautiful home on an island, you're damn right I'm going to do it. Matter of fact, I said by the time I'm either 50 or 55, at that point, I want to use the benefit of my comic book collecting and experience to enjoy the rest of my life, maybe swimming in a nice swimming pool somewhere on a tropical island. As much as I love comics, you can't take them with you. But there will be somebody who says, oh, you're not a true collector if you sell them. Well, I don't care what anybody else thinks about what I do with my possessions. And that's why I tell people all the time, you should not care what anybody else thinks about what you do with your money as long as it is being safe, responsible, and honest. If you're affecting other people by what you do, then yes, you have to value somebody else's opinion. But if you spend $1,000 on a TV and you decide, I want to take that TV and smash it onto the ground, it might be dumb, it might be silly, it might be crazy in somebody else's eyes, and it might be something no one else would do, but it's your choice to do it if it's yours. You don't have the right to take somebody else's thing and destroy it. Keep that in mind. And like I said, there are some elitist people, and that's in the video game world, it's in the beauty world, it's in every part of YouTube. There are some people that think they are far superior than others, and they think it's their job to police the quote-unquote community, and then make videos talking about how unified and how wonderful the community is. Well, a community is only as wonderful as its worst person. Remember that in the military. They teach, you know, you're only as good as the worst person in your unit. So it doesn't matter if out of 100 people, 99 of them finish a race in 30 seconds. If it takes the last person in your group an hour, well, then that makes everything in better perspective of what the group is. So that's why I always laugh when I see somebody's video when they talk about, oh, how wonderful the community is. Well, there are some in the community who are not very nice to me. I mean, just look how many thumbs down this video probably already has. I could make a video saying that I have saved a kitten, and I'll get at least 5 thumbs down. But it is what it is. So buy and collect and grade what you love, and you will never be disappointed. So let's see any more questions. Ghost Rider Alpha says, hey, can you tell me I have comics with 8p, not 20 cents? Is it original? Yes, it's original. What those are comics that were sent over to Europe. They are not really considered variants. There are like Canadian editions and different, like from Britain and things like that. They tend to not maintain the same value as the US versions, but they are made from, example, like Marvel or DC. They just ship them overseas, so they have to convert the price to that country's currency. They tend to be not as financially desirable. Of course, there are always exceptions to rules. I mean, if you look at the first appearance of Captain Britain, there is no American version because that was created in Britain. So that book is going to be valuable. So even if they made an American version, it probably would not maintain the same value. So, of course, like I say, research things to find out, and you'll see. But, yeah, that's basically what that is. So you can get them cheaper, but they're definitely not going to be worth as much. Okay, so Vanel Brick Film says, I noticed a sudden increase in Deathstroke #1. Any ideas? Yeah, there's rumors going around that Deathstroke will be appearing in 1 or 2 movies. As of now, it is rumors. They haven't really confirmed anything. And we know anything on a rumor, people are going to jump on things, which is actually smart, because when you invest, you want to invest before everybody else does. Think of it like a stock. If you can get inside information, which is illegal when it comes to the stock, insider information, but people do it. If you don't think that happens, then you really aren't paying attention. But just imagine if you got inside information about a stock tip. You want to pounce on it early, because why? You'll buy it cheaper. Most people jump on board not when a stock is at its cheapest, but when it's on the rise. I mean, look at the media right now when they talk about the Dow Jones. Oh, look, it's at all-time highs. Well, that's the dumbest time to invest into something, because haven't you been told all your life, buy low and sell high? But yet, what do all the media and everybody else tell you to do? Buy something when everybody else wants it, when it's on the rise. So, you ever hear the expression, do as I say, not as I do? There's a reason why most people are called sheep, because they tend to do things not on their own research, but by following what everybody else does. And you better hope that group knows what they're talking about. Because remember, just a few hundred years ago, everybody in the world thought the world was flat. Just because a bunch of people say something does not mean they know what they're talking about. And that's why if you've ever seen this new movement, it's called #WalkAway. And I promise you most of you have never heard of it because the media won't talk about it. But if you go on YouTube and type in #WalkAway, you will see all of these people that are converting from the Democratic left side. Why? Because they started researching things and they learned a lot of things that they were being told were not accurate. Now, most people will automatically dismiss that and say that's crazy. Well, congratulations, you're a follower. Doesn't mean you have to be. So, trust me, I was one of them myself at one point. When you actually do your own research, you'll learn a lot of things that you've been told are not accurate. And that even comes to something like comic books. Because a lot of things you're told, aka Mylars, they are very good to protecting your comic, but they will not stop it from its eventual demise. It will slow it down. But like I said, your Mylar will last longer than you will, and definitely longer than your book will. So, let's continue on. Like I said, my rants are going to be about trying to get people to think for themselves, trying to think on a different level. The ones that say this is crazy and roll their eyes and think, oh, he's just stupid or whatever, those are people I can't help because they want to think on a one-dimensional level and be told how to think. Well, you better hope the people that are giving you the information are being honest and accurate and not just trying to get whatever money they can from you based on your brand loyalty and your emotion. Because like they say, your feelings are irrelevant to facts. And unfortunately these days, most people base things not on actual information that they verify, but by their feelings and opinions and what they're told. Not the best way to live. Alright, so let's see. Anime 10100 says, I got comics in plastic wrap that was wrapped tight. Well, congratulations. You're going to build up moisture in your comics. You're not going to allow the air to escape, and eventually bacteria will form, and you will ultimately destroy your comics. Now, those comics will not be destroyed overnight. It will take years, but trust me when I say, take any comic that you have wrapped in cellophane out and put it in a regular bag and board, because you are ultimately going to destroy your comic. So hopefully you'll see that as not me trying to insult you, but trying to educate you so you can actually keep your comics in a better pristine condition for a longer time. Let's see, Michael Levinchenko says, when I ship eBay packages, I use Gemini comic mailers. It's worth the cost. Well, that's why most people get things. Like the packaging that I showed, it's going to cost a little bit more to ship it because you're putting it in a box. Those mailers can easily be bent. And that's why if you've ever seen my videos where comics the packages are destroyed, the ones that are in boxes, the comics are protected, even though the box is destroyed. The ones in those cheap mailers that are convenient for most people, when those get bent, the comic inside also gets bent. So the one biggest pet peeve I have from people on eBay is they say the thing of, well, I put them in mailers all the time, and they always arrive okay. Well, if you play the game Russian Roulette, and if you're not familiar with that game, what the game is let's say you have a gun that shoots 6 bullets. They put 1 bullet in there, and you hand it around and pull the trigger. Well, 5 out of the 6 times, you're not going to get the bullet. But the one time you do, pretty much the game is over. So, if people want to play Russian Roulette, and let's say you've sold thousands of comics, and you sell a whole bunch of cheap comics, and you send it out in those mailers, and every single one of them arrives perfectly safe, and then one day you ship out your 9.8 Hulk 181, and you put it in that same Mylar, and it gets damaged. You think you're really going to care about the thousands of ones that you sent in the past, or do you think you're really going to be upset that your 9.8 has now been destroyed? Trust me when I say, the one time something bad happens is going to overshadow every good day that you've ever had. Believe me, if anybody's ever gone through a traumatic event, it doesn't matter how many years of their life have been wonderful, that one tragic event can change your whole world forever. So keep that in mind. You are going to save money, but remember, in life, you get what you give. If you put the minimum, expect to get the minimum. And when you put the least amount of protection, because it is more cost effective, you run the risk of having that comic eventually play Russian roulette and find the bullet. And then you have to pay for it. Because if you sold that to somebody like me, and it came damaged because you wanted to send it as cheap as possible to put extra money in your pocket, well, now I'm going to get a refund for that book. So you're not going to get your money. You're now going to get a destroyed comic back that was unfortunately your fault, even if the post office did it. Because if the person would have packaged it with the proper protection, the postal worker could not have been able to damage it. So people don't understand the responsibility, because if you buy a TV from, let's say, Best Buy or Walmart or some online place, do you want them to wrap your TV in bubble wrap? And if it comes damaged, do you want them to say, well, I ship it like that all the time and it always arrives safe, I can't understand why that happened? Do you think you're going to be like, oh, okay, I'll keep this damaged TV because you did send it this way all the time, so I guess I should keep it? No. What are you going to do? You are going to send it back, and what are you going to get? Your money back. And what are they going to get? A broken TV that they either now have to repair, throw away, and take a loss, or actually learn from that mistake and never do it again. Like I said, it only takes that one time to change a person's whole perspective, so be very careful with that. Just because things are cheap for a reason. Those comic book little mailers that you fold over, they're cheap for a reason. There is always an ultimate price to pay if you make that mistake of getting too comfortable with something like that. There's a reason why cops wear bulletproof vests. Yes, it makes you sweat. Yes, they're heavy and they're uncomfortable. But I guarantee you, the cop that wore them the day he got shot, he's going to be very happy that he decided to wear it, as opposed to the person that said, well, it's a lot easier to go around without it. Think about other situations other than the one that is most convenient price-wise, because it will bite you one day, so be careful. And I hope it never does. But when you play Russian roulette, eventually you find the bullet. Alright, so let's see. Alright, so RetroTech says, hi Chris, I'm trying to get into the new Marvel Comics, especially with the new number ones. My advice would be I wouldn't recommend it, but hey, if it makes you happy, do it, because that's why they reboot every 6 months. You'll probably never see an issue 100 ever again. But he says, I feel frustrated picking between so many darn variants. How do you feel about all the variants? Well, I hate them. As you could see in my last video, it took me a couple of months to be able to get enough newer comics to be able to show a comic book haul, because somebody asked for some of the newer books. So I might get the 1 in 100s every now and then, but as we see with, for example, Batman number 50, when they made Batman number 24, they made this, what was supposed to be this historic run of Batman and Catwoman, you know, getting married, and they stretched it out like crazy, getting you all prepared to buy Batman number 50 where they were supposed to get married. So spoiler alert at this point. If you don't know, then, you know, hold your ears at this point. But it ended up, Batman 50, the marriage didn't happen. So they built it up and took advantage of people to take their money, whether you thought the story was nice or whatever. And if you're one of those people that has the brand loyalty and you're going to defend what they did was the equivalent of you finding the girl or boy of your dreams, and they string you along for months telling you, you know, eventually we'll make passionate love to each other, and then after waiting months of believing this, they finally throw you onto a bed and say, get ready for the time of your life, take off all your clothes and get ready to perform that wonderful act that you've been building up for months, and all of a sudden they get up and leave. Not cool. So what DC did was an absolute money grab. So me, that bought that 1 in 100 variant, I pre-ordered it based on the hype. I was fooled, lesson learned. That book is not going to be worth anything. So be very careful. There's a reason why they reboot now, like what it seems like every 6 months or so. It's because they know people are going to go and spend the money. That's why the only one I bought, and like I said, the only new number one I bought was the Amazing Spider-Man 1. I asked for, in my pull list, Amazing Spider-Man 798 through 801. And for some reason, they put the 2 comics in for Amazing Spider-Man 1. And because they're my only local comic book shop within a 30-mile radius, and they've always been pretty good to me, and when they put things in somebody's pull list, they have to spend the extra money, I didn't want to be a jerk and put it back on the shelf, so I bought it. But if I did not have that in my pull list, even though I didn't ask for it, I wouldn't have purchased it. But comic companies are a business. Their job is to make money. They can sell a number 1 issue more than they can issue 647. That's why you see, even with Action Comics and with Amazing Spider-Man, how all of a sudden they keep going back and forth. So my recommendation is to be very careful, because if you are buying them because you think they're going to make you a lot of money, you are going to be very disappointed. Now, if you're buying them because you love to read them and you enjoy them, then disregard everything that I just said. So it really depends on why you're doing something. If you think a number 1 issue is going to make you a lot of money, again, for every one that does, you're going to have 90 that won't. So you're going to be disappointed more than you will ever be happy when it comes to that stuff. And businesses know that. Because if you make excuses for a business's poor quality and poor practices and poor behavior, they love you. Because they know they can give you the most general, generic, basic stuff, knowing that you will buy it even if you complain about it. And in my original channel back in 2014 to early 2016, I was buying every variant under the sun. I was one of those people. And I got a few good ones, but mostly I have long boxes full of books that'll probably end up being in the dollar bin. So, in my opinion, because you're asking me, I would recommend to stay away from them. Unless, like I said, you enjoy reading them. If you're doing it for money, you're going to be very unhappy. Because there used to be a day when you said you had Amazing Spider-Man #1, you knew exactly what comic you're talking about. Now tell somebody you have Amazing Spider-Man #1, they're going to say the following. What volume? Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3, Volume 4? What is it, up to Volume 6 or 7 at this point? They're going to keep doing that. How do you stop it? By not buying it. If you buy it, you're telling them that you are willing to purchase it. And they only care about your money. But they'll tell you they're in it for the love. If you want to believe that, you have every right to do that. Again, you know, the saying of the fool and their money is soon parted, I think it's more naivety and trust. That's why I tell people, only have brand loyalty when a brand is loyal to you, when they give you the quality that you expect. If you allow them to settle, it doesn't matter how much you complain. It doesn't matter if you buy the book and make a video of you burning it to show how much you're upset with that book. They already got your money. They don't care what you do with it. Other people in the comic book community will care what you do with it for some reason. But, again, think a little bit deeper. So, my opinion is, I would stay away from them. But, do what you love. Jake asks an easy question. He says, "Hi, Chris. How's it going?" It's going rather well. I'm actually quite enjoying this. I'm sure I will get some negative responses from it, but again, I don't really do it for that. I just find it funny how easily it is to trigger some people. But I am actually doing well, and Jake and everybody watching, I hope you are doing well as well. Esteban Torres says, "Hi, everyone. I'm late. I hope that's not for your job. I hope that's not you being a person that's operating on somebody. And I definitely hope it's not because you are trying not to get pregnant. With a name like Esteban, I don't think you have to worry. But then again, I don't want to assume. But I'm sure you meant you're late to the show. But better late than never, because this one's a rambler. It's probably going to be at least an hour long, which means probably 12 people will watch the whole thing. So I'm glad you're here. Let's see. Michael Levinchenko says, "CGC shows and tells how you ship your comics to them. Just because they're telling you to do something does not mean it's the ultimate way to do it. If you want to continue to tape your comics down, you run the risk of somebody that untapes them potentially damaging your comic. So you can use that as recommendations, but not as gospel. That's up to you." Let's see. SVP 2010 says, "Preach." That I probably have done today. Some will take it as me being arrogant. Some people will see it as passionate. I will let you decide which one you want that to be. Gaming Psychology and Science, hello. Good to see you here. Says, "Hey, Chris, could you show us how to fill out the PGX form and where we send that form? I didn't see it on their site." It's very easy. All you have to do is just print it out. And then on the bottom, if you go on the bottom of their website on every page, it shows the address. It's a P.O. box. You just send it to that P.O. box address. It's very easy to fill out. I mean, honestly, if I could make that video, but probably 100 people would watch it. You just go on the site and you just read it, and it'll tell you exactly what you need to do. And if the printout is just too small, just write it on a piece of paper. Basically, you could write it on a piece of paper. Just write your name, address. If you're using a credit card, just put your credit card information. If you're doing PayPal, just put your PayPal address and just list. I'm putting this comic. Let's say it's Iron Man #1. You write in Iron Man #1. Do you want it pressed? Yes or no. Is there a signature verification? Yes or no. What is its potential value? That you have to look up, but that's basically subject because, I mean, price of a comic is valued on its grade, and obviously you don't know the grade because you're getting it sent in to be graded, but you give a rough estimate of what the value is, and then you just tabulate the insurance and the shipping costs. It's actually pretty easy. So, again, and you look at the bottom of their website, and I'm going to try and tell them to redo their website because it's not the best, and it could definitely benefit from an update. But there's a P.O. box you send it to. All right, so let's see. Let's see if there's any other questions. Let's see. Mark Nigel, and forgive me if I say the names wrong, he says, "Hey, Chris, do you have any thoughts on Amazing Spider-Man number 375? My key thing would be, if you love it, get it. But let me look that up really quick because I don't know offhand, so I don't want to just assume. So let's type in Amazing Spider-Man 375. And let's see what comes up. Oh, okay. I actually got this book when I was a kid. It's got that typical 90s cover where it's all shiny and reflective in the light. I bought it as a kid, so for me it doesn't have the same significance. I'm sure because it has Venom. It's a Mark Bagley or Mark Bagley cover. It does have Venom on the cover. I wouldn't spend more than $15 on that book. But I'd probably be the wrong person to ask because, like I said, I bought that book when it first came out back in the 90s, so I paid cover price for it. So books that I spent cover price for, I can't see spending a lot of money on, especially when it's a book. You know, it doesn't really have any first major appearance. It's not a Hulk 181. So, I mean, if you could find it for under $20, get it. But I don't see that as one that will end up retiring on. So, again, if you buy it because you want to read it, then that really doesn't matter. And let's see. I love when I try and scroll down and all of a sudden it flips like 50 different things. All right, so let's see. And if you want to ask a question again, make sure it's the simplest. Noah Burke says, but it's got electrolytes. I love that. That is from that movie. What's the name of that movie? Idiocracy. Where the people, and it shows the point I'm trying to make, that movie is showing that people eventually got so dumbed down that they just regurgitated everything that they heard. So they were actually putting what was the equivalent of Gatorade on their crops, and all the crops were failing, and they couldn't understand why because they weren't smart enough as a society. And if the person, I forget the actor's name, but the lead character says, "Well, do you even know what electrolytes are?" And everybody looked dumbfounded. And they would basically say, well, it's in that product. So they didn't know. So that's eventually, to me, that movie Idiocracy, if you haven't seen it, please watch it. To me, that is not a comedy, it's a documentary. To me, that is our future if left unchanged. Because that future is people that were so used to being told what to do. And who ran the country? What was it, Bravo or Bravo? The company. It was a company that ran the world. People need to understand these things. Companies love to sucker people into thinking they care about you. Presidents will kiss your babies, thinking, "Oh, he loves babies. He kissed the baby." No, he's just doing what he's gonna do to get your vote. Companies love your money. They don't love you. So yes, even though Marvel is making some pretty darn good movies, they're going to convince you to think they really care. They care about the bottom line, the money. That's why you will never see another Thor Dark World. Why? Because it was not a financial success to the point where people would watch another movie like that. Do you think all of a sudden they didn't have passion when they made that movie? I'm sure they'll tell you they did. It all comes down to stockholders. Companies, especially major corporations, are not run by people like Stan Lee. Which, by the way, Stan Lee hasn't been part of Marvel Comics since the 70s. He's just like Colonel Sanders from Kentucky Fried Chicken. He's an image that's a likable character that makes you want to continually buy their product. Again, basing things on emotions is a good way to have your money go bye-bye to somebody else who will be very happy to take it and have a very nice smile on their face. If you've ever seen a movie about the devil is not sitting there all scary with a pitchfork. He pretends to come at you as a very caring, loving person who will give you everything your heart desires until you sign the contract and learn what it was really all about, suckering you in. So be careful. Most people will tell you what you want to hear because it's safe and it's what everybody agrees with. The reason some hate me is because I will tell you what you need to hear, even if it's not wrapped up in a nice, pretty package. Take a pile of dog poop and put it in a bow and sprinkle perfume on it and put it in a nice, expensive package does not make it a great gift. So keep that in mind. I am very direct, but I am doing it with the intention of caring. So Noah Burke, that was perfect when you said, but it's got electrolytes. I absolutely love that. That is the comment of the day. And if you have not seen the movie Idiocracy, please watch it, because like I said, I view that as a documentary. Sadly, that's where we're headed. But the beautiful thing about going down a road, you can always change directions if you so choose. If you want to continue to follow down a road where the bridge is out, don't cry as you're crashing down to your death that you fell off a bridge that wasn't there, just because you didn't believe it. Belief and feelings are irrelevant to truth. So let's see. Poken Joe says, "Hey Chris, what's shaking, bud?" Well, the good thing is I don't have arthritis and I don't have seizures, so I'm not shaking at all. But I'm sure somewhere around the world there is somebody doing the twist or shaking a little bit of shake and bake, so maybe that's it. But other than that, I'm doing well. So as you can see, I'm in a sarcastic mood. Pages Films and Plasticos, Mr. Angel Vargas says, "Hi, buddy, just tuned in. Welcome, I appreciate it." Darthiukian 88, and again, I'm probably going to butcher these things, says, "What's up, We Love Comics? Your advice paid off for me yesterday. Teach me more, master." And that's what people I want to have keep in mind. You know, I may say things bluntly or sarcastically, or maybe say it in a way that you're not used to, because most people, you know, they want to be pampered and be told what they want to hear. My intention is to help your collection become better, because why put more money in somebody else's pocket when you can keep it in yours, so you can buy more of the things that you love, or maybe pay a bill or two, or maybe pay your rent on time. So there are going to be plenty of videos that you can watch that are going to make you feel comfortable. They're going to make you feel like part of a group. Oh, I'm doing what everybody else is doing, so I must be doing it right. Not if it's the only reason why you're doing it. So my videos are going to rub some feathers, because some people have to be in a bubble. They have to be surrounded by people that pat them on the back and say, "Great job, you're doing what I'm doing and what next door neighbor's doing and what that girl and guy over there are doing." Don't be one of those people. Just because you're doing something different does not make it wrong. Unless, again, you are hurting somebody else or doing something that is not morally sound, like stealing. You don't want to do that. There's a thing called integrity. But if you collect comics because you love to read them, or you collect comics because your sole purpose is to roll them up in a ball and play target practice with your nearby garbage pail, some people may not like it, they may not agree with it, they may never do it, does not make it wrong with your purchase of your money. And those that have to sit there pointing fingers saying you're doing something wrong is an elitist that has more free time on their hands to do judgment of others than to look at their inner beauty and find something positive that they can do with their lives. And if somebody doesn't like me saying that, hey, there's a reason for an unsubscribe. I am very welcome to let you go, because I only want, like, the people that are here, the good ones that are here for the right reasons. So if what I say triggers you and throws you into a temper tantrum and you feel that you have to hate me, hey, says more about the person. So I'm having fun with it, and some people will see this for what it is, and others will say, "Oh, I'm unsubscribing." Okay, I can't help you. So Comic Sniper says, "Hi all." So everybody say hello to Comic Sniper. That's very nice of him to include everybody. Let's see. Noah Burke says, "Greater notes on a 9.8. Then essentially they wouldn't need them." Well, technically they do, because only a 10 would be a perfect comic. So 10 would be the only one that wouldn't have Grader's notes. But a 9.8, you have to have a certain amount of acceptable flaws. You can have a couple of flaws and still get a 9.8. So you should be able to know what's the difference between a 9.8 and a 9.9. It's very minuscule, but you know, you should have the right to know. He said, "Would people be mad at spending the $5 then?" Just a thought. I like Greatest Notes options for sure. Well, I guess we'll find out, because like I said the other day, if you saw the video, I was able to convince PGX to do a trial basis on adding as an option the Greatest Notes to the back of your slab books if you want them, and it's a $5 charge. So whether people want it or not, we'll find out. Let's see. SWP Goat 99 says, "Do you think that Fantastic Four books will ever be in high demand again?" Absolutely. Comcast has backed out of the Disney Fox deal, and some people are saying, because, you know, they have to create the drama because they don't know how businesses work, they're trying to say, oh, well, now it's up to the government. If you think a multi-billion-dollar company is going to have the government, that average salary is about $300,000, tell them what to do, you don't know how governments work. I told people months ago, even when Comcast was trying to get in, there is no way that they will take Comcast deal, even though cash sounds better, because most people do not know how to think from a business end. Disney is throwing in stock. When Fox gets that stock, and all of a sudden Fox properties become Disney's properties, do you think people that are loving these Marvel movies and all of a sudden find out that X-Men and Fantastic Four are now going to be part of that company, do you think that's going to help their company or hurt their company? It's going to help it. So what is that going to do to the stock prices? You think it's going to lower them or raise them? It's going to raise them. So if you were a person that got the stocks options from Disney before the merger happened, let's say they're worth $10 a share, and you got, let's say, 10,000 or 50,000 of them, and then all of a sudden the Fox deal goes through and Disney's deal is approved. Now all of a sudden the X-Men and Fantastic Four are back to Marvel, and people are all excited. What do you think are going to happen to those stocks? They're probably going to quadruple overnight. So if you are a smart businessman, that cash deal, cash devalues. People really need to learn the difference between fiat currency and money. We don't have money. We have currency that's backed by nothing. So that cash, although sounding like a large amount from a business perspective, is silly because each day it loses its value. But if you purchase the stock and you know that your stock is pretty much guaranteed to go up, well, you're going to get 3, 4, maybe 10 times the value of the initial number. So even though Disney's deal is quote-unquote lesser in the dollar amount, it is worth more. And if anybody knows how laws actually work in any nation throughout history, there's a thing called the golden rule. He who has the gold makes the rules. So if you think that Disney is not going to get this deal approved because they're waiting on the government, trust me, all you have to do is bribe a government official about $100,000 or more. They will change whatever law you want. That's why we have the government that we have right now. Whether you like it or not, you just have to look throughout history. Money rules governments. So that deal will go through. So your question, will Fantastic Four be in high demand again? Absolutely. Right now, you should be, if you're going to invest your money on anything, if you are investing it for monetary gain, if you are not spending your money on X-Men, Fantastic Four right now, you are going to be very disappointed when you find out, for example, Fantastic Four 48, which you can buy mid-grade for about $500 right now, is going to probably be worth about $2,000 about a year from now. It will be untouchable. Hulk 181, see that as the modern-day Amazing Fantasy 15 in another 5 years. And just imagine where Amazing Fantasy 15 will be at that point. I mean, I bought my original Hulk 181 back in like 91, 92. I paid under $100 for it, and it was probably a 9.6. It got stolen from me. So trust me, the day that they have the official announcement, those books are going to triple overnight. And what's going to happen? All the people that said, oh, I got time, they're all going to pounce on them, and they're going to spend 2 to 3 times the amount. So Fantastic Four, especially the key issues, X-Men, like giant-size X-Men, and books like Hulk 181, get them while you can. Even Hulk 180, even in low grade. I always tell people, low grade is better than no grade. And if you buy a book because you love it, really shouldn't matter the condition of the book. Because if you are one of those people that tries to put people down and you'll never buy a coverless copy of a book, then how could you say you love reading it when the cover has nothing to do with the story? I see a lot of hypocrisy in the quote-unquote community. And sometimes, you know, it's funny to ruffle some of the elitist feathers. Because no one is, sadly, not many people are able to challenge the quote-unquote elitists in any community. So be very careful about things and think on a different level. If you follow the herd, you better hope the herd is going in the right direction. There's a reason why it's easy to get a bunch of cattle to follow each other, but they usually lead them to the slaughter. So keep that in mind. And Darth Ushian 88, and again, forgive me if I say it wrong, says insider trading happens 24/7. Absolutely. The sad part is they allow it. Insider trading is illegal. Governments know insider trading happens, and yet it continues to happen. Why? Because Wall Street is a multi-trillion-dollar industry. Even somebody like Trump can be bought out, whether you like him or not. Yeah, he's a billionaire, but billionaires are billionaires because they take money from other people. They don't use their own money. They use other people's money. If you knew anything about, like, for example, silver and gold stocks, you're buying a piece of paper. You're not actually buying the metal. And for every one stock you buy, or 1 ounce of quote-unquote paper gold, they sell 99 more of that same piece of paper to someone else. So 99 people, 100 people think they own that 1 ounce of gold or 1 ounce of silver. They don't. They own a piece of paper. That's how they steal people's money and get away with it. And that's why governments allow banks and other places to do illegal things and get a slap on the wrist. Because trust me, if you stole $1 billion from a bank, you got caught, and all you got was a $1 million fine, would it stop you from stealing again? I just stole $1 billion, and I got fined only $1 million, so I got to keep the other $999 million. Sounds like a good deal to me. You ever wonder why insider trading happens and happens on a daily basis, like that gentleman just said? It's because when you have a lot of money, you can overturn any rule that most of us will be thrown in prison and have the key locked away. But unfortunately, people don't want to see that because they're not told it. John Hino Josa, I'm sure I butchered that, are Walmart comics a good investment? It would depend on the book. It would depend on the condition. And that's the best I could say. So it really depends on the book, and it really depends on the condition. And again, if you buy it because you like it, then it doesn't matter where you buy it. So that's something I cannot stress enough. Yeah, and this is what Darthusian88 says. When a broker calls you and he says he's got a hot tip on a stock, that's insider trading. You're absolutely right, and it's 100% illegal, but it happens all the time. And the reason they get away with it is you slip enough money to a congressman or a senator, they'll look the other way. It happens all the time. The reason they get away with it is we do nothing about it. Last time I checked about the article called The Constitution, it is stated, we the people. So I know a lot about law. You don't have to be a lawyer to study law, just like you don't need to be a chef to learn how to cook. Consent of the governed means that you can say yes, you could say no, or you could say nothing. If you say nothing, it's the same as agreeing because you're not stopping them. It's like somebody stealing your car, and you sit there and go, hey, stop doing that. If you do nothing else, you just say, hey, stop doing that as they drive away with your car. And if you say, oh, well, I guess I can't do anything because the car is gone, and you don't call the cops, do you think that person's going to give your car back, or do you think you just lost your car? So even though you didn't want them to do it, you didn't stop them from doing it. So in legal terms, you actually gave your consent. So that's why the document doesn't say we the government or we the corporations. It says we the people. So you're going to learn a lot more than just comics here, whether you wanted to or not. I guess that depends on if you shut it off or not. But people really need to learn about laws. This is why people complain about things and they riot and they do all these wonderful things that change nothing because they're doing it 100% wrong. And again, it's based on emotion instead of learning. You can actually change any government throughout history by not pulling one trigger, by learning how law actually works. But most people don't want to do that because it requires effort. So let's see if we have any others. So yeah, see, you think you're on a comic book channel, next thing you know, you're learning about the law. But if anything, it protects you from everything in your life. Let's see. Okay, Dalton Kenway. Finally, a name I actually probably said right. Says, hey, Chris, I heard rumors of a Legion of Doom movie. Do you think the comics for that possible movie would be worth more than X-Men #1 or Avengers #1? If you're comparing them to those, absolutely not. Especially if the movie doesn't get made. But even if it does get made, remember this is DC. They don't really have a so far good track record on their movies. I mean, look what they did with Suicide Squad. Look what they did with Justice League, Batman v Superman. So even if they made the absolute best movie possible and it was the highest grossing film of all time, do I see it matching X-Men #1 and Avengers #1? No. But it will raise its value. So if you can get it for cheap, well, let's put it this way. If you buy a book for $100 and can turn around to sell it for $200, you've just doubled your money. So, I mean, it doesn't have to be $10 million, but I don't see it ever reaching X-Men 1 or Avengers 1. I could be wrong, but you're asking my opinion, and that's what I believe. All right, so Darthusian88 says, thank God I only bought Batman 50. One was Jim Lee, the 1 in 100. Yeah, I bought that too, but now it's not going to really be worth anything. Gene Paul Ace Peter says it's up to volume 5 now. I'm not sure if that means, I mean, if anything, I have the microphone close. I'm Irish, English, and Italian. I'm Sicilian, and I'm from New York. We've never been known for that conversation, especially New Yorkers. We're never known for our quiet demeanor. So if it's too loud, I apologize. But this is normal speech. Especially if you're like me and you're in New York and you're an Italian and you have an Italian family, the only way you're heard is if you can be louder than everybody else. Because I don't know if you have an Italian family or are familiar with an Italian family and how they work, is they all talk at the same time and they all want to be heard. So you have to be louder than everybody else. So unfortunately, most people will perceive that as being obnoxious. That's just being part of an Italian New York family. So hopefully that straightens it out. So anybody that thinks, oh, Chris is just being obnoxious by the way he's talking, it's just something that would be normal conversation at a family gathering. So Comic Sniper says, let your money do the talking. Absolutely. Keep that in mind in everything. You want to change a business? Don't complain about it. Stop giving them your money. If you don't like all these reboots, stop buying them. Sometimes you have to sacrifice something you might enjoy for the greater good. So if you complain about them and you still buy them, do you think they're going to change it? You know, people are complaining about all this SJW stuff that entered the comics. Well, why do you think it continues? People may complain about it, but if they keep purchasing them, that's the bottom line that a company cares about. They don't care about your feelings. They don't care what you do with their product after they bought it. Let's say you make sculptures or a painting. Let's say you made a painting and you sell it to somebody for $1 million. Do you really care what they did with it afterwards? I mean, you could, but who cares? You spent it. You agreed on a price. It's no longer yours. That's why I get a little disappointed when there are people that say, you know, people get mad that somebody bought somebody's artwork and sold it. Now, I haven't done that. I still have a piece that I got from 1991. I went to a New York Comic Con. It's the only one I ever went to, where I got the Todd McFarlane book signed. I also got Rob Liefeld to sign a book. Michael Zeck, which was a pleasure. He was such a gentleman and has an amazing signature. But I was standing online for an artist that was doing X-Men at the time called Art Thibert. And I heard somebody in front of me say, oh, he does sketches. Now, at that time, I never heard what that was. And I thought that was the coolest thing. It's like, oh, instead of a signature, he'll draw something? So I took a backing board out of one of my comic bags, and I went up to him, and I was probably about 17 at the time, 18 at the time. And I said, can you draw a little sketch? And he drew a little head of Wolverine and signed it. I still have it to this day. But if I wanted to turn around and sell it, I don't care about the person's feelings about what they did. It's my property. When you buy a car, somebody put a lot of effort into making that car. You can use it in a crash derby if you want to. It's your product. So if somebody gets mad about that, that's their personal problem and their personal opinion. Don't let anybody else tell you what to do with your money, as long as, again, you're not doing something immoral or, you know, something that's illegal. Keep that in mind. So if an artist has a price for something that they're selling, what you do with it afterwards is 100% too bad on their end. If they didn't want somebody to sell it, if they don't think that happens in this business, especially nowadays, then they're just naive or their head is so far under the ground, because I guarantee you they sell them themselves. Because I actually watched a really good video the other day where a person I'm subscribed to was interviewing an artist. And he even said himself, he actually takes some of his original art and holds it to sell it later on. And then later on he was complaining about how he was upset and he could understand how artists get mad that people sell stuff for a product. For a price. Well, he was being a hypocrite there, because he said himself that he actually takes his own work that he did, his original art, and he saves it to sell it later. So how come it's okay that he does it, but it's not okay if somebody else does it? See, again, don't let other people tell you what you can do with your money and what you do with your stuff. If you made a painting, yes, you put your blood, sweat, and tears into it. If you don't want people to turn around and sell it, then don't sell it. I mean, anyone ever hear of an art gallery? What do people do with artwork? They buy it, and then they sell it for a profit. Why is that okay? But if somebody draws, you know, Spider-Man on a comic book, it's sacrilegious to turn around and sell it. And again, I don't even sell them. It's just, like I said, there are a few people that are so elitist that they feel it's their job to tell you how to live your life. And sadly, so many people are so afraid to stand up to these people that they actually do something against what they want to do just to fit in with a bunch of people that will do nothing for you in your life. That amazes me that people do that. I actually, in my original channel, I tried to defend myself from some of the accusations and lies. I tried to get along with people that were stabbing me behind the back, people bringing up my name in conversations that had nothing to do with me. And then I realized, why am I wasting my time with a bunch of strangers who have nothing but negative things to say? You know what? If that's the way they want to live their lives, then I'm not surprised that it's a reason why they're angry all the time. So again, another tangent. All right, so let's see. Pocan Joe says, I buy variants to become a millionaire. Well, you can become a millionaire with buying variants. You just got to buy about $2 million worth to $10 million worth of variants. So if you buy about $10 million worth of variants, you're guaranteed to be a millionaire. Because even if they devalue, you'll still be a millionaire. So yes, there are ways to become a millionaire. You just got to spend millions to do it. All right, so Hi Guys says, can I have a shout out? So I will say no. Now I'm kidding. Yes. There's your shout out to Hi Guys. So let's see. There's a lot of people that less questions. Oh my God. So yes, you can have a shout out. So shout out to Hi Guys. Why isn't it Hi Guys and Gals? That's sexist. I'm kidding, by the way. But there would be plenty of people that would say that these days. Okay, so Radies Nadiar CET Lead AP. I don't even want to begin to know what that stands for or why, but good luck on that one. It says, I like that one. It says, what are your thoughts on CBCS? They show how to crack the case without damaging it. I lost respect for the integrity of the book. Well, I don't know if they did that, but if they did that, that again is being dishonest. They're telling you to do something that is deceiving. And if a company actually did that, shame on them. Now, I can't assume just because that was stated that that's fact. I would have to research it and verify it. And that's something I highly recommend. How many people on Facebook have just shared something that somebody posted because it fit their own personal agenda and never checked it? So I'm not saying the person's lying. They could be mistaken, or it could be true. But without verification, I'll never know. So I would have to look into that. But if the company of CBCS actually told people how to crack a case without damaging it, they are basically saying, here's a way to be dishonest. I think that's a very poor job, and I would never give them another dime. But there will be plenty of people that will find that advice helpful. Why? Because now they can be sneaky and dishonest and pretend to be morally virtuous and do things behind people's backs. You know, integrity, whether you show it or not, karma always finds you. That's why I try my best to do the right thing. And that's why I tried so hard to defend myself from people that were making accusations about me that were just not true. I love the one where people say that, oh, Chris has a separate eBay account and he sells books behind people's backs to pretend that he collects books and sells them. Well, all I have to say is point out any book that I have and I'll show it to you. So how could I have sold something if I still have it? But yet many people will believe that because maybe they don't like me or they like that person. If you want to believe everything that you're told, you're going to be told a lot of horse manure. So, keep that in mind. So, to anybody out there that says that I have a fake account and I sell stuff behind people's backs to be sneaky, all I have to say to you is point out a comic, because I have a video showing 15 books that I've sold in my lifetime. Point out a book that I've shown in any video that you've ever seen, and I'll show it to you. So how could I have sold something behind people's backs to try and be deceitful if I still own them? But no one will ever do that, because then they'll be called out. And that's why people thumb down the video, but they'll never say anything, because they want to stay anonymous. And I know who they are. One of them, actually two of them, try and pretend to be nice to me, like they think I'm stupid. I just don't care. So, all right, let's see. Dave0126 says Idiocracy is a prophecy. It sure is. Because like they say, it's got electrolytes. How many people say that with Gatorade? You know, or the commercial. You ever remember the Snickers commercial? Snickers really satisfies. How many people remember that? How dumb is that to think, oh, if you're hungry, you could fill yourself up with a Snickers bar. You sure can, but is it going to be anything healthy? If you have an empty gas tank and you fill it with water, are you not filling the tank? You are. Is it going to make the car run? It sure isn't. But people, again, will regurgitate everything that they hear. Snickers really satisfies. Yeah, especially when you're dying of cancer from all that sugar that you put in your body and your teeth all fall out and you gain 600 pounds. You know? A fool and their money are soon parted. And unfortunately, if common sense tries to come in and talk to you, people automatically dismiss it because it makes them feel bad. And that's how they get you, based on emotion. If they can make you feel bad but get plenty of your money, they're really good at doing it. Just look at Hollywood and their agendas right now. There's a reason why these things are happening. Just sadly, most people don't want to admit it or not be able to see it. When you have your head in the sand, don't be surprised you're not getting a suntan. Alright, so Comic Sniper says dog poop classic. Yeah, and that's my point. You could take the most ridiculous thing and pretty it up and make it sound really great, but it's still dog poop. You know, that's how people are these days, unfortunately. Mark Nijin, and again I'm butchering it, says, I was smart and I listened to your advice. I was patient and waited for Spider-Gwen 24 to be cheap before I bought it. The cover looks awesome, but I'm wondering if it's worth buying. Again, if you bought it because you love it, then it was worth buying. If you bought it solely for the potential profits, you probably may be disappointed more often than you will be happy. So again, buy things because you love them. If you only buy them for the financial value and you're basing all of your emotion on hoping that comic becomes successful, if it doesn't, now everything that you invested your emotions into has now gone the opposite direction you wanted it, and don't be surprised if you're not happy. So again, buy what you love. People say that all the time, but they really don't practice what they preach. Every single comic I bought because I loved it, even if I overspent on it. So I'm not really disappointed. Even that Batman 50, when I bought it, I was very excited about getting it. It devalued. It's not worth what I paid for it. Am I going to shoot myself over it? No. It's just another comic in my collection that I have a good story to talk about. Hi guys, says, hey Chris, how's that Thor book doing in the sun? I purposely have not checked it because I don't want to see it until the day I decide that I'm going to make the video at the end of the summer. So I technically do not know. All I know is it's in a Mylar, it's in a half bag, it is taped shut, and it has been facing the sun every day for now about a month and a half. At the end of the summer, I will take it and make a video showing the end result. So I haven't looked because I don't want to know. Because basically, as the days go by, it's so minute that you'd actually not see a difference. So I want to see the before and then the after, just like everybody else will. So that video will be coming out at the end of the summer. But I hope this teaches people that even again, if you put something in Mylar and you hang it up on the wall and it's exposed to the sun, you've got a very expensive comic destroyed by a very expensive Mylar bag. Be very careful. Alright, Big OFGCU42 says, saw the video on shipping out books. I know you don't sell very many at all. I don't sell any. I haven't sold any since that last one back in 2016. He says, but if I'm trying to start to sell some books via eBay and Instagram, do you have any tips, Chris? Basically, I have very many tip videos, so I would recommend going to my playlist, checking them out. So, again, package your comics like you would want them packaged. If you have the mindset of, oh, I'm going to send this out because it's cheap, well, would you want that same package to arrive at your door? Would it be guaranteed to arrive exactly the way it was sent? And if the answer is no, then don't do it just because it's saving you money. Because, as they say, penny wise, dollar foolish. If you have to spend an extra $1 for a better box for a comic that is worth hundreds of dollars, it makes much more business sense to spend that extra $1 to ship it, or the extra $5 to ship it, than to have a $1, $2, $3, $5,000 book be destroyed because you tried to save 99 cents. Penny wise, dollar foolish. Most people do not think from a business aspect. They think cheap. They say, well, I can buy a mailer, put some bubble wrap around it, tape it up, write do not bend, that will cost me $5. But if I get a bunch of cardboard and buy a box, that's going to cost me about $5 or $6, and the shipping is going to be about $8 or $9. I don't want to do that. I'll go cheap because it gets sent all the time and never gets damaged. And then one day you put $1,000 book in that little cheap package and it gets destroyed. I bet you wish you spent that extra $6 or $7 then. So think beyond your pocketbook. There's a reason why most people do not own their own businesses, because they would go out of business within a week because they think in the wrong way. When you get a book, you have to factor in not only the price you paid for it, but you have to factor in the shipping cost. Then if you get it graded, you have to factor in the cost of how much it costs to be graded, how much it costs to get sent and returned, how much the insurance was. You have to factor those things into the price, and just because you choose not to do that does not magically change it to the original $10 that you spent on it. You know, like I said, there's a reason why most people don't have businesses. You have to factor in, there's a difference between net and gross, and if you don't know the difference between those two, I highly suggest you learn them. Because there's a big difference between your net profit and your gross profit. They're not the same. Because one of them, you have to factor in all the costs. If you own a business and you own a store, you have to not only factor in, let's say you own a comic book store. You don't base everything on what you bought and sold the comic book for. You have to factor in how much rent did you spend, how much electricity did you spend for your air conditioning and for your lights, how much do you pay your employees, how much you have to buy other products that don't sell. These things have to be factored in, and that's why many businesses go out of business. Because somebody will say, for example, I bought a comic for $10, paid $5 to ship it, went and sent it to get graded, spent the extra money to get it back quicker, and still have the nerve to say I spent $10 on that book. Hello, McFly. Just because you don't say it doesn't mean it changed the reality of what it was. If you spent $10 on a book, it cost you $5 to ship it, that's now $15. If it cost you a total of $50 to get it graded and sent back with insurance, you've now spent $75. You did not spend $10 on that book. Even if you make a video and says, look, I got this book, it came back a 9.8, blah, 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 I only spent $10 on this book. No, you didn't. You're just not being honest. That's why when I make my videos and I show my books, I put in every price factor, including when I get books graded, because you have to factor those into the cost. And if you can't do that, it's probably why you most likely do not own a business or a successful business. All right, so Jean Paul Ace Peter says, when the team I was part of redesigned the labels for PGX, we discussed and tried to encourage them to put greatest notes on the back of the slabs as an option. Yeah, I actually tried for a while. It took basically me not giving up. That's the one good thing about me being Sicilian Italian from New York and a Scorpio, is I basically don't really take no for an answer, and I don't give up on things. So yeah, there were many people that actually recommended that, but they said no a couple of times. But I just was very persistent, and they finally got convinced when I sent them the last email. After a while, maybe they just said, all right, just shut this guy up. Let's just do it already. Who knows? But, yeah, there were people that tried to get that done, but I was just really stubborn on it, and I wanted to make sure it happened because I wanted it, and I know I hear it all the time from my subscribers and even people that aren't subscribed, because there are plenty of channels that I will listen to. I don't listen to any of my haters, by the way. I could care less about what they say. But there are other channels that I listen to, and I've heard so many times of people saying that they want greatest notes on all slabs. And I guarantee you, if this becomes successful, one day CBCS and CGC will also eventually have them. So it's nice to know that I had a little part in actually making that happen. So, Gene, if you did that, that's awesome. Maybe try and get them with CBCS and CGC. Keep working on them. Don't take no for an answer. Never give up. Because when you give up, you guarantee failure. So, let's see. Dr. Von Chilla, welcome. It says, Hulk 181 is a, I'll say, poopy book. Boring story, bad trimp art, and an ever worse cover. And still I bought the darned thing off the rack as a 10-year-old kid. Well, there you go. That kind of is a point. So you didn't like that book, but yet you bought it. So, if anything, the fact that you bought it as a kid, I guarantee you're very happy about that poopy book now. And most people only buy a book because other people told them to. And I'll give you a prime example. I was one of those people too. When I first saw Amazing Spider-Man number 298 on the shelf at 7-Eleven, I passed it by because I thought the art looked ridiculous. I did not like Todd McFarlane's art because I was so used to, like, John Romita Sr., because I was really interested in the old Spider-Man look. And he made very small eyes, so that's what I was used to on a Spider-Man mask. And then all of a sudden you see this new version of Spider-Man where 90% of his mask is his eyes. And I thought it looked ridiculous. But why did I get them? Because all my friends said, oh, look, Wizard Magazine says Todd McFarlane is the greatest artist in sliced bread, and you need to get these books. And I ended up buying it a couple of months later for like $5 or $8. So I was told to like something. You ever listen to something on the radio and you absolutely hated it the first time you heard it, but they played it so much you started liking it? That's what programming is all about. Repetition, getting you used to something, even if it's not accurate or truthful, even if it's something you don't like. You're programmed to like something through repetition. That's why there's an old saying that says, tell a lie long enough, it becomes the truth. Unfortunately, people think that's some crazy conspiracy theory, and then they wonder why things never get solved. So, like I say, think on a deeper level. And the people that do would probably like my other channel. But I don't talk about it here because it has nothing to do with comics. Avid Collector 80 says Fantastic Four 48 is 700 at a 4-point grade on eBay. Yeah, on eBay. People. Now, here's what I want you to check, Avid Collector, if you're still there. It may be selling for 700, but are people buying it for 700? And that's the difference. I mean, I have a pen in my hand. I could list this pen on eBay for $1 million. Doesn't mean somebody's going to buy it. Me personally, I would never spend right now $700 on a 4.0 grade of Fantastic Four 48. Somebody will that doesn't research it, but there's a huge difference between what somebody's selling it and what somebody is willing to buy it for. And this is the biggest misconception that businesses will never tell you. Businesses make you think that they make the decisions and you have no factor in it. It is quite the opposite. Things are not based on what is sold. It's what people are willing to pay for it. So if you are not willing to pay for something, it doesn't matter the arrogance of the company. If you don't pay for it, they either go out of business or they change. You want something done, stop paying your money. Don't listen to the thing of making them think they're in control. They're only in control if you let them. Like, here's an ironic part, and this is going to sound a little weird, especially from a comic book channel, but think about somebody in an S&M relationship. And if you don't know what that is, I'm not going to get into details. And there's a person that's called the quote-unquote master, and there's a person that's called the quote-unquote slave. And the biggest misconception is the person that is the quote-unquote master is the one in control. Well, that is the furthest from the truth, because the person that is the quote-unquote slave gives the permission to the quote-unquote master to do the very things that that quote-unquote master does to that quote-unquote slave. So who really has the power? Because if that person didn't give over their power, there would be no power placed on them. So again, off on a tangent. And when I mean the slave term, that's a whole, like a BDSM community thing. So I'm not talking about slavery in its traditional sense. So if anybody got offended by that, there's nothing I can do about the fact that you only thought in one way. So let's continue on before I go down a dark hole. All right, so let's see. Comic Sniper, and this is so true, says, common sense is not so common in this world. That is very true, but is easily preventable. You can easily change your mindset, just like you can easily flip a switch from off to on and on to off. It is all a matter of choice. If you believe something strong enough, nothing anybody does or says will change your belief unless you decide. Even if your belief is wrong, or immoral, or whatever. Anything can easily be changed. You just have to make the decision to do it. People make you think life is so hard. Well, if that's what you want to believe, don't be surprised that your life is so hard. Life will give you what you generate and what you really feel. So it's actually approving and showing you that what you really felt was true. So all you have to do is change it. Like I did a video the other day on my other channel. And I want you to think about this because this will totally change your life perspective. How many people, if they had a time machine, would be afraid to go into the past because the slightest change could alter the future? How many people would be actually afraid to go into the past for that reason? That they could literally do something as simple as stepping on a bug, like if you've ever heard of the butterfly effect, it could actually change the whole entire history of the world and the future of the world. I wouldn't, because the smallest thing that you do could actually change life in a way that you couldn't see dramatically. But now think of this. How many people are, their excuse for not changing the world is they say, well, I'm just one person, I can only do so much, or my thing is all so small. You don't think that your small thing can change the world in a way that can dramatically alter its course? It's all about how you put things in perspective. So the world teaches you that it's not important to do something because it's just a small little thing, but yet don't go in the past because that same small little thing could change the history and change the future. Think about that. So hopefully you'll learn more than just comics on this channel, and I think, again, that's why some people hate me. But hey, if they can't think on a deeper level, that's their decision. All you have to do is pick up a book and start researching stuff, and you'll learn that probably 90% of the things you've been told are basically lies. And anybody that says that's a conspiracy theory or it's crazy is one of those people that is, congratulations, you're a programmed person that regurgitates everything that you heard. And yeah, I'm sure this video is going to be an interesting one. All right, so Horror Breakdown says paper markets for precious metals are heavily manipulated, which ends up affecting the physical metal price. Absolutely. I am one of those people that on my original other channel, I talked about gold and silver a lot. I've studied and researched a lot about the history of money. Again, if people knew how money, quote unquote, works today, not only would they throw it in the garbage, they'd probably hang every single person that works in every single government around every single country around the world. We don't have money, we have fiat currency. There's a huge difference. And unfortunately, most people don't learn it because they're not told it. Because when you lie to people, it's not always just telling a lie, it's omitting the truth. So yes, that's why people are easily manipulated, because they believe in the people in the suits and ties and have the degrees, and they're on a television, and they believe everything they're told because it makes them feel good. And some people can profit off of it. People really sell their souls for profit these days, which is kind of disappointing, but you get what you give. If you're going to sell your soul for a little bit of fiat currency to make you get a better car and a nicer swimming pool and a larger house, even though it affects millions of other people in the opposite direction, well, you're not a very moral person and you're a very selfish person. But unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there. Wow, this definitely has turned into an interesting live show. If you watch this whole thing, first of all, I have to say you have a lot of free time like I do. I do also want to say thank you and be proud of the fact if you actually were able to listen to me ramble on for this long, put it in the comments section. You deserve an award. So I can ramble, and people think this is just a comic book channel. All right, so let's see. Michael Strela says, this is about comics and nothing else, question mark. Not about politics, yet this happens about comics. Because like anything in life, there is nothing that is one-dimensional. Because when you are talking about a political point of view in something like a comic book, see, the way to sneak political point of views towards the people that don't understand what's going on is through putting it through your social networks, through your media, through your schools, through your television, through your movies, through your music. People think this is crazy conspiracy stuff, and yet it happens all the time. It's right in front of them, and they still cannot see it. So everything is political if they make it political. If you have a comic book that's saying that women are superior than men, and yet try and preach tolerance that all people are equal, well, they kind of contradict each other, so that's an agenda. People just don't seem to want to get it, or they want to sit there, hear no evil, speak no evil, say no, hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. That's why they use 3 monkeys. They never show that with 3 people. They always show it with 3 monkeys. They're kind of making fun of you. That you're on the intellectual level of a monkey, and you're programmed not to see anything, not to say anything, and not to hear everything, even though it's there for you to see, hear, and talk about. Because, again, it goes outside the crowd, and most people need the importance of a crowd to feel a part of something, instead of being a part of themselves and being an individual. Like I said, hundreds of years ago, the church convinced the world that the world was flat, and you would be murdered or thrown in jail for life if you said the world was round. So do the masses really know what they're talking about? I'll leave that up to you to decide. Let's see. Dalton Kennedy says, thanks for answering my question. Yeah, DC has a bad track record, and that's what you got to go by. You go by their record. There's an old saying that says, by their deeds you shall know them. Don't go by what people say, go by what people do. My haters will tell you I'm the devil. My haters will tell you I'm some crooked person that has a fake eBay account that is saying that I love to collect comics and yet secretly selling comics behind everybody's back to be deceptive. And there are people that are dumb enough to believe that. All you have to do is ask me to show a comic, and I'll show you every single comic and prove that I don't sell it. But people don't ever do that because they know they'll be exposed for who they are. Don't always believe what you hear, or at the very least, verify it. Otherwise, you're only hurting yourself in the long run. And if you want to judge somebody, make sure, like they say, he who is without sin may cast the first stone. People are very quick these days to judge other people. You better be pretty virtuous yourself if you're going to make so much condemnation on someone else. You can't lie from the truth. All right, so Nipam Malhotra says, sorry, sir, many sound like a stupid question, but do Golden Age comics or Silver Age comics have first prints? And again, that's not a bad question, because if it's something you need to know about, there are no bad questions. So back in the days of Golden Age, Silver Age, and even probably Bronze Age, there was no such thing as a second print. Because back then people just bought, made comics because they loved them and people read them because they read them. They didn't really buy them to put them in a Mylar and store them away for their value. That's why you see mainly on older books what's called a subscription crease. It's because many people would fold them in half and put them in their back pocket, and it would eventually damage the book. But they didn't care because they did it for the real love of it. That's why I always find some people that say they love comics but you have to have a 9.8 grade as silly. You're not being honest. Because if you love comics, you wouldn't care if it's a 0.5. Because if you love reading it, well, you could still read it as long as it's not smeared to the point it's, destroyed. But that's why I find it funny when somebody says, especially when they point out other people are not comic collectors or not true lovers of comics because they don't read them, but those very same people will never buy a coverless copy. That blows my mind, and it shows such hypocrisy that so many people are afraid to call out on. That it's like you say that, oh, you make fun of other people or you attack other people because you say they don't invest the way you do or they don't love comics the way you do because you're supposed to get them to read them, but yet you'll have multiple copies and you'll never buy a coverless copy. Well, last time I checked, there's no story on a cover. So if you are truly a lover of comics, you wouldn't care about the grade and the condition as long as it's readable. But like I said, there are plenty of people that will have this higher moral ground and be very dishonest even with themselves. It's very easy to call those people out because they tend to be very angry. And if you notice anything about my channel, I'm not very angry. I was at one point, but like I say in a video I made the other day, if you learn from your mistakes and you correct them and you become better from them, then it can't be bad. And the best part is, this views went down from 31 people watching down to 23. So there are plenty of people that don't want to hear, the reality of things. And that's fine. I care about the 3 or 4 people that do care about this stuff. Because, like I said before, one small thing from one small person can change the world in a huge way. So I don't worry about the masses who are doing what other people tell them to do and follow things what other people say to follow. I concentrate on the 1 or 2 people that are brave enough to go past that and want to change the world, or even change the comic book industry. You can do that, unless you say you can't. Alright, so Monk's Den and Welcome says, just an FYI, guys, and gals, I'll put that in there. Geoff Johns, I probably pronounced that wrong, announced that San Diego Comic-Con that he is producing a new DC TV show based on Stargirl. I heard about that, and the reason I didn't make a video is because I basically think that's a female version of Captain America. I mean, look, she's got a blue outfit with a white star on her chest. I wonder where she got that from. So to me, that's just a copycat that I really don't think will go very far. That's why I didn't talk about it. But if you think that's going to be a great show to buy a comic on, go for it. In my opinion, I don't think that's going to go anywhere. And I could be wrong, but that's okay. Gene Paul Ace Peter says the Volume 5 was in reference to Amazing Spider-Man run. Yeah, and I think, what is it, Volume 6 or 7 now? That's what they keep doing. And Eddie Ed says, what is an SJW? Well, that's called a social justice warrior. These are people that give the ultimate definition of drowning in good intention, because in their mind they think they're doing well. They preach tolerance unless you disagree with them. Then they will physically and emotionally attack you. So they kind of go the exact opposite of what they preach. That's why I say, by their deeds you shall know them. You look at places like Black Lives Matter and places like Antifa, which, for example, let's go with Antifa. They preach about the fact that they hate fascism, but what they're doing is eliminating free speech, because if you say anything that they don't like, they try and silence you either through gang mentality or through violence. That is actual fascism. So the ironic part is, and I guess they're not smart enough to see it, or they get paid very well to look the other way, that they are preaching tolerance and they are preaching against fascism. That's what Antifa is, anti-fascism, by using fascist tactics. See the irony when you point it out? But the media will make you think they're heroes. So they gang up on people, they wear masks, and they silence people. So the whole SJW movement is people that, like, for example, if you go with the feminist movement, they're trying to teach tolerance, how all people are created equal. But if you're a white male, if you're a straight white male, you're the devil. To me, that's not tolerance. It's either everybody is equal or nobody is equal. You can't preach tolerance by abusing somebody else, especially if it's their race, creed, or color. So that's what an SJW is. It's a hypocrite. It's a person that may have had the best intentions of the world, but they are doing quite the opposite of what they say. You cannot bully somebody and preach tolerance, because if you don't tolerate everyone, you are not tolerant. So it doesn't matter what you preach if you don't practice it. That's like your mother or father, when you're a child, sitting you on their lap and telling you how bad smoking is while they have a cigarette in their mouth. It kind of does the opposite, because you will base things on what you see, not what you're told. So, unfortunately, most people don't want to think that deeply, and people get angry when you go against their belief. And I always tell people there's a reason there's the word lie in belief, because whether you believe in something or don't believe in something, either way, you don't know. Just like when I said before, if you were still listening when I did the glasses half full or glasses half empty, they have you only focus on what you see. People are being conditioned and they don't realize it, and that is why the movie Idiocracy, if left untreated now, will become a documentary one day. But the beautiful thing is, once you do that hello McFly moment and you wake up and you realize these things, you can stop them. So if you want to stop a comic book company from making garbage stuff that you complain about, don't buy it and rip it up or complain about it. You know, don't spend your money and do all that stuff. Just don't buy it. Edward Negron says, what's the name of your other channel? If you want to know what that is, just private message me. Well, you can't do that, but there's on my Facebook, join my Facebook page and send me a message there, and I'll be more than happy to tell you. Because it has nothing to do with the comics, I don't really want to promote it here. I want to keep them separate, because a lot of the stuff I talked about today, which made probably a few people, you know, get angry, is what I talk about. And I've taken a lot of abuse. I was the walk-away movement before it became popular. I was the fake news movement before the president ever talked about it. I've known about this stuff for years, not because I base things on what I'm told, it's what I research. And with that being said, you don't get everything right, but you learn from your mistakes. And Michael Strez says SJWs are a bunch of hypocrites. I think it's more naivety, to be fair, because I think in their mind they believe they're doing the right thing. But all you have to do is go by their deeds. If you are preaching tolerance, tolerance means to tolerate. If you are not tolerating somebody, then you are not tolerant. So how can you preach tolerance if you tell a certain group or a certain individual or a certain way of thought to be wrong and not acceptable? To me, if you want to learn from somebody, you sit down and have an honest debate. Yelling and screaming, name-calling does not help you improve or change your mindset. It actually reinforces it. Because if you have a certain belief and somebody attacks it without showing proof, because even when you present people with proof, they don't want to hear it. The only person you're hurting is yourself and your future for your family and loved ones, and I think that's a very silly thing to do. So when people like me and many others go against the norm, we are attacked, abused, made fun of, and ignored. All you have to do is see, is the world in general getting to be a better place or a worse place? And you really know the answer to that. But people don't want to do anything about it because then they are subject to that attack. And that's why I'll get the thumbs down. I'll have people that'll make live shows and all of a sudden just point my name out and make fun of me or attack me. If that's what they want to do to their lives, hey, you know, that just says a lot about them. But you cannot preach tolerance by showing your intolerance, because then you're just being a hypocrite and you're just trying to toot your own horn and say, hey, look at me, I'm important. That's why most of the time, like even on this video, I don't show my face. I mean, it's not wrong to do it, but that's why I called this channel We Love Comics, because I wanted it to be all about the comics, not about me. In the grand scheme of things, I'm not that important to people that want to collect comics. Most people want to see my comic books. They don't want to see what hairstyle or what clothes I'm wearing. And if you do, you're in the minority. So the whole social justice warrior movement, I think, was based on good intention, but there's a reason why they say drowning in good intention. Now, I'll leave it with this little story, and it has nothing to do with comic books, so if you're tired of hearing me ramble, this is probably the point I would recommend to shut off. But if you want to see life in a better perspective, continue to listen, and I will end with this little situation about reality. There's a little girl, and she's walking in a forest behind her house, like she always does. And as she's walking, she's kind of putting her hands through all the flowers and all the leaves and everything, having a great time. And comes across this tiny little tree where there's this cocoon that's just wiggling. And it just catches her eye and gets her attention. And she sees this little wing trying to get out of this cocoon. So she plucks the cocoon off the tree and places it in her hand. And she sees that this butterfly or moth or whatever creature is in there is having a really hard time trying to get out. So this little girl, thinking she's doing a good thing, she cracks open the cocoon, setting what ends up being a beautiful butterfly free. And she's sitting there smiling, thinking, I just helped this beautiful butterfly from being trapped in that cocoon. Well, what happens is the butterfly goes to the tip of her finger, and as it tries to fly away, it falls to the ground, ultimately dying. And this little girl is really upset. She's like, well, what happened? I saved that butterfly's life. I actually kept it from being trapped in that cocoon and helped it. So out of curiosity, she goes home and she talks to her parents about it and tells the whole situation. So the parents actually look up butterflies, and they discover that for the butterfly to get the strength in its wings that it needs to fly, it has to struggle out of the cocoon to build up the strength. And by that little girl's good intention of helping that butterfly by opening the cocoon for it, that butterfly did not gain the strength that it needed to be able to fly away, ultimately causing its demise. So if I can teach you anything in this world, sometimes the best of intentions, if not knowing what you're doing, by factoring that into the equation and seeing the bigger picture, what you could be doing could actually cause more harm than good. So that little girl's intention was to help that butterfly by opening that cocoon, by doing it a favor. And what that did was ultimately cause that butterfly to die, which is the exact opposite of what that little girl wanted. When she learned about what happened, she then got what was called understanding. That's wisdom. Wisdom is through experience. And the only way you will get true wisdom in your life, whether it's collecting comic books or whether it's trying to save the world, is you do not base things on what you feel. You do not base things on what you believe. You do not base things on what you're told. You question everything and you verify it to make sure you know what you're doing. Because I guarantee you, the next time that little girl went through that woods and saw a cocoon, she would have passed it by and let that butterfly struggle so it can gain the strength to fly away. Thanks for listening. I hope some way, shape, or form this helped. I thank each and every one of you that spent the time with me. And to those who hated me for it, hey, They'll make plenty of their judgment videos if you want to watch that kind of stuff. They preach drama, and they sure give you plenty of it. Thanks for listening. Love you all. Have a great day of collecting, and I'll see you next video. Enjoy your weekend.